Alright, welcome back to another episode of Stitch Method. Before we begin, make sure you click that subscribe button because I want to share all of my knowledge with anyone who wants to hear it. Now that that is said, let's get down to the main part of this lesson. You can consider this my Truly Understanding Modes Part 2 video. The Part 1 will be linked below, and I highly advise that you watch that video if you haven't seen it. That video talks about how modes really are about the chord progressions. Today we're going to be talking about the scale portion of it. A lot of people are concerned with modal scales, and they are really easy to understand, and I'm going to show it to you with this play along. I'm actually not going to be playing a lot of scales. You are. So you got to make sure you have your guitar, it's in tune, and we're going to actually show you how easy it is to learn what modes actually are and how to use them. Alright, so let's get going. I'm going to have a chart up on the screen, and it's going to show you a basic G major scale. And if you look, everything we're going to be doing right now is going to be in the key of G, the whole entire video. And so if you look at the chart, you have 3rd fret of the E, 5th fret, and then A string is 2, 3, 5, and then D string is 2, 4, 5, G string 2, 4, 5, B string 3, 5, and then the high E string is 2, 3. That's the root note. If you want to play that 5 up on the higher E string, you can, but the scale ends on the 3rd fret. That is G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and back to G. Again, if you want to put that A up there because it's in the lower one, you can, no problem. That's the scale shape that you are going to be playing today, so make sure you have that down. Now, in the video that I mentioned before, Truly Understanding Modes Part 1, modes are about the chord progressions. And what you're going to do is you're going to play the scale in this scale only. And I'm going to magically, through the computer or through your mobile device, going to make you sound like 3 or 4 different guitar players. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start with what's called an Ionian chord progression, which means I'm in the key of G and I start on the G chord from my progression. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to disappear for a second, create a loop that starts on the G major chord in the key of G. Don't worry if your head is spinning, it's going to get easy. I'll be right back. Stay here. Alright, I'm back. And I have a loop in the key of G starting on the G major chord, known as a G Ionian progression, the chords. Now what you're going to do is I'm going to loop this, and I'm going to play along with it, but you're going to load up this G major scale I just showed you. And now a new chart is going to appear. And this chart is going to show you where your G's are in this scale. They are on the 3rd fret of the E, they are on the 5th fret of the D, and they are on the 3rd fret of the high E. And what's important to realize is that you want to start your phrasing and or end your phrasing on that note. Now because my chord progression is in the key of G and it starts on the G, this scale you're playing is going to sound like a G Ionian scale, which is also known as a G major scale. So you play along for a little bit with me, and this is the litmus test, this is the control group, this is what we're going to compare everything to. So you want to be able to solo with a G major scale on top of a G major chord progression. And so solo however you want, trust in the scale, just make sure that you're focusing your beginnings and or endings on the G notes. Here we go, 1, 2, you play along, here we go. So that was our control. That was a G major chord progression with a G major scale. Good. Modes. What are modes? Modes are just a different starting point of that major scale that you were just playing. That's all it is. If you notice, you're playing 7 notes over and over again. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and back to do. All a mode is when you start that scale on another note besides its quote-unquote root note. And what you're doing is you're placing the root note in a different place or a different setting or a different mode of the scale. But knowing that doesn't really do you anything. It's how to apply it. So now I'm going to talk about how you can start hearing everything. Well, I'm going to take the chords that are in the key of G. Again, all this information is available in my first video, Truly Understanding Modes Part 1. And the idea is in the key of G, I have G, A minor, B minor, C minor, D, and E minor, and I do have F sharp minor 7 flat 5, and back to the G. But I'm going to create a chord progression now that starts on the 2, the A minor. I'm going to create one. I'll be back in a couple seconds. You ponder what I just said, and I'll show you how easy it is to understand modes. So stay right there. All right, and we're back. So now there's going to be a chart up, and it's going to show you the same exact scale, but now you are starting on the second note, okay, which is an A. And this second note, when you focus your major scale, but you rearrange the root note in a different setting on the second note, it becomes a Dorian scale. Now that's all good and dandy, but when do you apply it? You apply it over a Dorian progression. Now this is where you're like, what in the heck? I haven't changed keys. You are still in the G major scale. I am still using chords from the G major key. All I'm doing is I'm starting on the second chord. So now you're going to take the same exact scale, the one that you were playing before. You're going to look at this chart. You're going to now focus your root notes on the 2 colored notes, which are A's, okay? And you want to start and or end your phrasing on these A's, and you're going to hear that scale that sounded so happy all of a sudden has become darker, all right? And so now all we're doing is I'm forcing you to sound like a different guitar player by changing my chord progression. You're using the same scale. You got it easy. So let's take a solo over this. Let's see if I can magically make your scale sound different. 1, 2, ready, go. So if I did my job and you did your job, you should have sounded like a totally different guitar player, and all I did was change the chords that we started on. You kept them to the same exact scale, shape, started on a different note. Let's try it again. I'm not going to do all the modes, but the first mode was known as Ionian. What you just did was a Dorian scale, but really it's just the major scale starting in the second place. That's all it is. And I played a Dorian progression in the same key. I started on my A minor, you started on your A note, and if the gravity of the chord progression made your scale sound like a Dorian scale. We'll do 1 or 2 more, okay? And this is just to show you how scales work, how modes work. The idea of, my son is waving hi to me, the idea of it's just a major scale starting in in a different point, excuse me. Let's try a different mode. Let's try Mixolydian. Now, you're going to play the same exact scale. If you look at the chart that's coming up here, same exact pattern, nothing has changed, except for now you have 2 different colored notes to focus on. These notes are the 5th note of the scale. Mixolydian means 5. So you're playing a G major scale, but you're going to start on the 5. Now, what I need to do is I need now to write a chord progression that starts on the 5th chord in the key of G, and that is a D major. Again, watch my Truly Understanding Modes video. This will make a ton of sense. And so all I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a break, come up with a Mixolydian backing track, and we'll jam together in a second. Stay right here. All right, this one's a little bit happier, a little bit more upbeat, but you're going to be starting on the 5th note of your scale, which happens to be a D. And so I started on the 5th chord of the key of G, which is a D. Made a faster chord progression. You want to listen to this chord progression. You want to make sure you're starting on those notes, number 5, sticking to the same exact path, the G major scale, but you're starting on the 5th note. This is a Mixolydian mode. And it's going to sound happy. It's going to sound like, really like pumped up. If you're into jam band music, this is the kind of progressions that we see a lot of. And so the idea is you want to start you're soloing on that 5 when you think you hear that D coming around. So here's that D here, so you can kind of see it as I play. And so let's have fun. You're playing the same scale. You're on now mode number 5, a different setting. You're in the Mixolydian mode. Your scale will sound different from the Dorian. It will sound different from the Ionian because I'm forcing it with my chord progressions. It's really interesting stuff, but it's easy to understand, hopefully. So with this interactive thing, hopefully it works. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. How'd that go? Should have sounded fine if you're starting on that D. I played a Mixolydian chord progression. I turned your G major scale into a D Mixolydian scale because I hold all the weight. I hold the gravity. The chord progression does. One last mode to discover. Now, just in case you're like, well, where are the other modes? This is where my Patreon account comes into play. Not to make a huge commercial out of it, but after this video is done recording, I'm going to make all these different practice sessions on how to practice this stuff in every mode and understand it. So if you want to get better at modes and you want to practice, you can join me at Patreon, where it's really called Practice Sessions and Bonus Lessons, where I practice everything on YouTube with you so that you understand how it goes. Enough about that. The last mode we'll discover is the Aeolian mode, mode number 6. So now another graphic's coming up of the same exact scale, but with note number 6 highlighted. Number 6 means Aeolian. So when you hear something is in blank Aeolian, it means you're playing the 6th note of the major scale, or you're starting on the 6th note of the major scale. And so the 6th chord available to us in the key of G is E minor. And so I'm going to write something using the chords in the key of G really quickly, but it's going to be starting on the E minor. And what that's going to do is going to turn your G major scale into an E minor scale or Aeolian. The minor scale itself, the natural minor, is known as the Aeolian mode. It's inside of the major scale. It always has been, sitting right there. So give me a couple seconds and I'm going to record a backing track in E Aeolian and we'll be right back. All right, I have an E Aeolian chord progression loop going. It's just the chords in the key of G major starting on the E, and I am magically going to turn your same exact scale you already played 3 times into a much different scale, the Aeolian scale. It means you're starting on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, note number 6. Start your phrasing, start your messages, start your sentences, start everything from this note. Stay within the scale shape, and you'll notice a totally different sound. So here we go. Play with me. 1, 2, ready, and... Alright, so this has been an interactive guitar lesson on modes. Again, I'm sorry to repeat myself, but my Truly Understanding Modes video part 1, link below and in the comments. If you need to find it, type in Stitch Method Modes, you'll see the video. This is its companion piece part 2. Now I want to get this point across to you, which is modes are just starting points for your different scale or different chord progression. I didn't explain here how to put any heart or soul or oomph into these because this is about understanding what modes are. The more you understand the simplistic nature of them, the more you trust in what your fingers can do, the better your soloing will get. But you need to practice. Now, how are you going to practice? Again, you can join me on Patreon where I will show you some really cool tricks of the trade on how to practice modes anywhere. But in case you're advanced and you're like, okay, I really want to get this down, just look up different modal backing tracks on YouTube, right? Look up D Mixolydian. Look up that'd be, my God, it'd be C Lydian. Don't listen to me. C Lydian backing tracks if you want to try the fourth note. But the idea is always the same. Modes are just the same exact scale starting in a different place, or in the video discussed before, same exact chord progressions, just starting in a different place. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this helped out just solve what modes are in terms of chords and scales. And thank you for being here. If you liked it, please subscribe, please share, and I'll see you again on another episode of Stitch Method. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.